Guys, this video is on CMMD long, market open long. Extremely interesting chart. You know, shout out to in my Discord, shout out to Parth who alerted to me when it was 100K bidder showed up down here, which at the time I thought, oh, that's interesting, but it was like back at its lows, back at its previous close with like no volume. I was like, well, I told him it's like, you know, usually nothing happens from these. Usually, if something's zero volume back down at previous close, you might get like 100K at open and nothing happens. Essentially, nothing happens. But you never know. You always want to pay attention to big volume. You always, especially when a stock's in the bottom of the range, because we've seen these pre-market pop and drop structures be strong. But I'm going to want to see some type of volume, some type of bookmap signal to maybe get in. And this thing was pretty straight up. This was a bad trade. I should actually never taken this. I kind of got caught in the reaction from this knife, and I thought I was going to miss the move. I did something similar that worked on my AIEV long, where if you remember that long, there was like a bounced off some lows, like 2.5. Then when I got up to 2.8, somebody shoved a huge bid under it, and there was only one bid, and I longed, thinking that bid was going to be strong. Well, the same thing happened here, and it knifed instantly. So whenever you're long enough single bids in low float land, and there's nothing below them, if it's like an empty air pocket, you always risk either people pulling the bids and getting knifed, or sometimes you just sell straight through it, right? And it does something like this. So it's kind of a chase, didn't work, but this signal, a bunch of even short sellers in my room hit this signal because they know what I like to see. The room, even if you're a short seller, the room knows what I like to see in terms of market open longs, quick pop and drop. You know, this had 750. Again, these aggressive pullbacks, man. We've seen how manipulators set these deep pullbacks up on high volume up for the long rotation, right? Look at that GRD I did in my video where, you know, crazy rotation. Anyways, clean book on this. I mean, I'm just gonna go straight to. I'll go to the chart. Yeah, here's that pop and drop. It's at the 1 minute 200 trading nothing, literally nothing. So it's like usually even on market open long, usually something's still trading like 20, 30, 50,000 shares, like random bits of volume. But this was like 2K 700. I was like, man, this thing's at the bottom and it's dead. But yeah, I mean, I didn't long. I usually, unless something kind of soaks at 9:30, I usually we'll see it on the book where this essentially tapped 144 and just instant ripped. And I usually like to see it, even if it's for 15, 20 seconds. I usually like to see it hang out down there for at least a tiny bit. To make a read. Because I'm afraid if it's too aggressive, if it instantly bounces and it's too aggressive, there might not be bid follow-up, right? So I passed on it, but we got 800K in a big knife. And I was telling Mikey, I was like, you know what? Like, when a stock trades big volume at the bottom of the range like this, it's usually one of two things that's going to happen. It's either someone's accumulating and it's going to rip, so it's bullish market open volume and they're going to rip it, or sometimes you see these on you'll get like actual dilution dumps on tickers that just don't have volume, and they're just looking at even if it's in the bottom of the range, they'll tap it and they'll sell it off to like even possibly new lows like 1.2, 1.1. So I was reading these quick pullbacks, man. I mean, the two candles you always have to read. It's just like shorting, man. You're shorting like Lucy. Shorting is all about making reads on candles like this. Aggressive candles near the top, right? Especially after a stock is already getting extended, bunch of higher lows, right? Nice little bid prop here, by the way. So on the flip side, this is an aggressive move at the top of the structure after multiple squeezes. And this is the opposite, right? This is the opposite. This is the quick pre-market pop opening near its lows. It has a bunch of volume. It's worth making a read on in low float land. So we'll go over to. So I got knifed on this, and then like a very interesting thing happened here. I'll show you in the book. You'll see why I made 4 entries because I was like, what? Anyway, here's the market open dip and rip. Again, there's bids down here, but when you long these dip and rips, always the main concern is their bid follow up, because the more aggressive it's pushing and the less bids it has, like the more likely like stuff like this is gonna happen. And also there's some ask up here. I was like, there's a decent amount, nothing super crazy, but given the lack of bid follow up, I don't know if I want to chase that. But then yeah, this is where I longed, and this is a big mistake where they did the quick pullback, they threw up this double bid, they rotated it, and even though they pulled these, which is scary, which obviously ended up having an effect, there was these micro follow-up bids, and I chased these micro follow-up bids, and I got instantly knifed, and that's what you get, man. Like chasing single bidders, and like I said, I did it on AIEV, and it worked. And sometimes it depends on the chart. Sometimes you're just unlucky, right? It's the wrong, but this is the so it was starting to so it did another like one of these aggressive short trappiest, especially these little clear out moves that are making lower highs. These can be very bullish. And yeah, they just started rotating it, but they started rotating it on no bid, so I was a little afraid to hit it. And funny enough, Mike Underdog was actually hitting it on this rotation, because he has his own things he's looking at. Even though we do trade very similarly long, but it was this bid right here. Some guy came in with 75,000, so it was like hanging. I was like, man, this is so bullish, man. This whole structure and volume, like it's bottomed out. It's doing these quick pullbacks. The volume's there. I mean, it's definitely has the rig potential. And they shoved a 75K bid. I'm just like, this is the thing. Like big bids can be bullish or bearish depending on where in the chart it's happening, right? If a big bid is coming after multiple short trap aggressive pullbacks at the bottom of the range with good volume, and it's happening at the key moment where it's going to start rotating through these lower highs, it's bullish, right? It's actually incredible. I saw that. I was like, this is one of the few times I think a massive obvious bid on the book is actually incredibly bullish. The times when it's not bullish is if, say, that 100K bid showed up here, right? Right. You already had the aggressive move, right? First move's the best move. And now like this is where the chase longs start to get in, and things can keep moving, but they often need to set up a midday structure, do a few short traps, maybe swipe support levels. Like they have to do things to move a stock. But if you start to see aggressive, massive bids at the top of the range after, especially if the stock's pushing, 2, 3, 4 times, you want to see what the reaction is to that bid, right? Because sometimes those bids at the top just get sold into. Like there's some guy at 150K at the top on a stock up 200%, just gets sold into. Just stick it to the stock extended, so people are looking to sell. It could be somebody bagged, like who knows who it is. They're just looking to get out because they're getting squeezed, right? And so big bid, 75K bid doesn't just mean pressure buy buttons. Like in fact, I would say this situation is more rare than the situations where you instantly want to buy. See, because when you first get the book, it's very tempting to see a massive bid on a structure you're bullish on and think that automatically means you need to smack it, right? It really depends on the context of the chart, when it's happening, and then you could get into things like, little micro patterns. You start to learn about these knife moves and reclaims and, nice volume and all types of stuff, right? Like in the right context, it could be incredibly great, but I would say most times, especially if a stock has already started making big moves, already made its first manipulated crazy squeeze, and you're trying to make the same reads over here off big bids, it's very inconsistent. Yeah, because of where it is in the chart. It might work sometimes, but most of the time it does not. So anyways, yeah, and then I missed this video was pretty short. I just sold it. I consider, by the way, I need to cover holding because I feel like people are starting to understand the long entries more, which is great. I mean, this one was really nice. But what do you call it? So you don't usually get 75K bids at a perfect time, but holding is important, right? So I would say like the most ideal situation for being long is you're in the first move, right? You're in on a stock that's not up very high, right? This was up like 25%. I'm like, dude, what if it just squeezes from 20% to 70 or 80? That's a huge move for me because I'm in so low. I'm like, I mean, I was in like around 170. But I was like, oh man, what if it just pushes like 2.4? It's like, that's a big move. But yeah, so I mean, the best thing is you're in the bottom of a range on a nice long pattern, and the volume starts increasing from the original manip volume you got in on, right? You're just starting to get increase and bid follow up, right? So we can look at the bid follow up on this. Yeah, I had a lot of aggressive knives. You know, I thought this had plenty of room to squeeze past two. So I was like, okay, like I'm going to look at the 1 minute 9, 1 minute 20 and just use that as a loose guide because volume's coming into the stock, right? I'm not like, I'm at a point in the structure where since I'm in so low and the gapping so low that I have a reason to be bullish holding even on, quick pullbacks like this, right? I'm just going to look at a few levels, keep it simple. And then a lot of times it is like once the volatility is kind of out of the way, on strong stocks would increase in value. If bids come in, this is ideal. I mean, this is just like bids coming in and bids getting respected, right? And MA is getting respected, right? Like, you can see you got some wicks at 1 minute 20, but they just got eaten up, and it was the volume, the volume, the volume, the volume. You know what I mean? So, especially this, they did this $2 high day clear out right here and quickly knifed it, and I was like, I bet they just squeezed that. I was like, that seems like an obvious short level slash long profit taking level that is just producing a reaction. But so I was bullish, and it was only up like 48, 45, 50% here. I was like, man, they'll probably squeeze two, keep pushing it. But then something you always want to pay attention to is how is the stock squeezing, right? Like this is a clear, like this is a heavy prop, right? Like usually you just like ideally you want a stock to be aggressive, bounce off the 1 minute 20 once or twice, and then like do a big rip. But this is kind of like a grindy, higher low, little short squeeze. But I consider the heavy, once it puts in about 20 minutes of this, I'm like, wow. I was like, look how many higher low, because maybe it puts in 10, 15 minutes, pulls back and rips. But I mean, this was just so, the more and more this kept propping, the more it's like, the more you have to take profits. It's one of those counterintuitive things where it's like the more aggressively something pushes, oftentimes the more aggressive you need to be with your profits in low flow land, right? Because in my opinion, oftentimes it's accompanied by lack of bid support, and it starts to get very wonky. So I was like, also the market across the board today wasn't overly strong, right? It really wasn't. This was like the main, this was the main runner, and this was a stock that only really went from like up 20% to up about 70. And that's about it. like it wasn't like a massive range move. I just got in on a good average, and some people even got in lower, right? So yeah, and then we'll just go over. I'll show you Cosm. This is like the end of the vid. Cosm's book was nice. They did a mini walk down in the open, and they did a big aggressive push towards highs that cleared out all the pre-market levels. And from a book perspective, I was too busy losing money on CMMD, but from a book perspective, yeah, they when they ripped it, minimal bid follow up, and they just filled like 5, 6, 7 layers of ask on this up only move. And yeah, got people hitting this in the 130s, got people hitting this in the high 120s. It was a great read by a bunch of people in the room, and just it's pretty rare you see this was down 30% in half an hour. That you usually don't see that. You usually don't get that lucky. This was a beautiful shoot. This is one of those like I'm glad I got the long, but I was like, oh, Cosm's book's kind of thick, and I thought that 780K candle at market open for CMMD was like too interesting. I was like, dude, this is so bottomed out. What if this just like fucking rips, So I miss this one. Shout out to people. And there's a few people in my room that got both. You don't have to only short, and you don't have to only long. So anyways, that's it for today, guys. A little short video. Interesting week. Really interesting week. Go do my Sunday review for my Patreon members. So we do that post that every weekend of just a more, focused study session on the plays for that week. And I also write notes for them to keep track. And I have 20 weeks of Sunday reviews that if you become a member, you get access to. You can actually just watch all 20 weeks. I don't have it restricted in any way. So go check that out if you want. So anyways, that's it for today. See you next week. Have a good weekend.